Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting. And today we have our last of the 34 talent themes. Jen's going to tell us what that is in a second, but we have two great guests for us to sort of close out the full 34. I have the privilege of introducing Florence Hardy. Florence is the founder of Le Lobo des Talents. I hope I said that right. I've never been great at French. In English, it translates to the Talents Lab, a boutique consulting and coaching practice focused on leveraging executive teams and organizations as they leverage their strengths for renewed energy and sustainable success. She is a fellow Gallup and Eat to Grow certified strengths coach, like all of us, who is passionate about supporting people as they connect to their strengths, adopt a growth mindset, and lead organizational and cultural transformation. Florence, interestingly, holds the unique honor of being one of the first strengths certified coaches in France, even before there were French language CliftonStrengths reports. Wow. She continues to work with international businesses in France and their operations across Europe. She joins us from her home and base in Paris, France. Welcome, Florence.
Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to have me. And I won't disclose the theme, but I feel certainly very honored and included.
Awesome. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, Florence. And it's my honor to introduce to you Shaina Lane. So Shaina comes from my old stomping grounds in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She is also an ICF certified coach, a professional career coach, Eat to Grow certified, and Gallup's CliftonStrengths coach like us. She's a healthcare provider turned leadership development expert. Love this with my old healthcare roots. She is an author, a speaker, and has a full-time job as a senior leadership development specialist for a home health and hospice agency, and a founder of the Premier Professional Coaching in 2019. She has a mission to empower the next generation of leaders as they grow and advance their careers. Shaina, welcome.
Thank you so much. Again, happy and humbled to be included.
Yes. And so I want to add one thing to Shaina's. Shaina, you just had a book come out.
Yes.
I did.
Can you tell us the name of the book so people can go find it?
Yeah, actually, I'll show you a picture too. It's called Leadership is Easy, Said No One Ever.
Nice.
11 Habits to Learn Early so you can lead expertly.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
And you can get it on Amazon.
Nice.
Oh, awesome. Nice. Thanks for the plug. We are here, all of us, to help leaders and everyone be able to use their talents. And today we're focused specifically on the talent strength of includer. So before we have Chad tell us what that is and then dive deep into this, I wanted to start with the two of you and have you share with us where this falls in your top 5. Florence, where is this for you?
So you may be able to see it on screen, but it's my number 4.
Number 4, fantastic. And Shaina, for you?
Yes, I've kept my strengths hidden, as you can see, but it is number 5 for me.
All right, great. Well, it's a little lower for Chad and I, which is why we have you here. Chad, where is this for you?
28. So 28. We are not scraping the bottom of the barrel, but we are getting close.
Oh, definitely. And it is 20 for me. So yes, we've brought the 2 experts on with us today who have this in their top 5, live and breathe it every day. So before we jump into the nitty gritty of all of it, Chad, let's level set us with the definition from Gallup.
Sure. So Gallup defines this as follows: people exceptionally talented in the includer theme accept others. They show awareness of those who feel left out and make an effort to include them. And so with that, I want to ask first, Shaina, if you could start us off by helping us understand, how does this theme show up for you personally? I know that our themes don't operate in silos, but if we were just focused on includer, what does this look like? How do people recognize that you're using it?
Yeah, so for me, it shows up, number 1, at work, really trying to make sure that everybody has a voice. I think that's the strongest expression of this strength for me is, in some of my jobs that I've held, I've been responsible for like the employee experience and employee engagement surveys. And it was always very important for me to make sure everybody feels like they have a voice, everybody has a say, sometimes to my detriment. But making sure that everybody feels like they have a place and they have a voice and they have an opinion. I think in my personal life, where it shows up the most is whenever I go on vacation, I like to invite everybody. So I plan a trip to Costa Rica and I invite all of my friends from all the different walks of life that I have. And sometimes that works out well and sometimes it doesn't. But that's kind of how it shows up for me in my personal life as well as professional.
Nice. Nice. Florence, what about for you? How does this show up? How do people recognize that you're using it?
Yeah, so from your reading of the Gallup definition, I guess suddenly I reconnected, accept others would be the one that resonates most with me, that is most true for me. And that practically means I will easily make people comfortable, welcome them, host them, whether at home or at work. So obviously as a coach and team coach, that can come in handy. I will welcome perspectives when they are different than mine. And it actually, for those of you who know CliftonStrengths a bit, I have a lot of thinking themes. And so that's a nice counterpart because whilst I can hold judgment, if I'm honest, and I have my ideas, I will also be able to just welcome others' perspective through Includer. And I think I also host an open table, whether at home or again at work. For instance, I have 3 kids. When they come in with friends, it's always, let's add one more. I honestly enjoy it. It's not just that I don't mind. I enjoy it. I like that, some people call it generosity, but for me, it's more like, let's be together. Let's be together. Yeah. And I will stretch the circle.
Yeah.
Of course, I mind about people being excluded, but maybe that is not just the most important thing for me. It's like, let's all be together.
Wow.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
I'm interested in understanding maybe the difference between woo, from your point of view, woo and includer. So we've had some conversations about this before where, we're thinking, Chad and I were thinking woo is, or includer would be something similar to woo, like you just want all of the people. Florence, can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, so I have friends with woo, close friends, and I believe my difference is that I don't necessarily bring a lot of energy to the table. I mean, I can, but it's not. I won't, get people to do something or to embark on something or to get into this big, friendly game. I just do this with no purpose in mind. It's just let's be together, and it can be very quiet. So I have less, let's say, energy than a woo would have toward that.
Okay.
It's different in that way.
Shaina, I saw you nodding along. Is that the same for you as well?
Yeah, one of the things that we had talked about before was not having an agenda for the includer, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like, as I was just ruminating on that a little bit, it's almost different. Like I feel like there is an agenda with includer versus woo. So woo to me is I love to just connect with people and break the ice. And for me, that's terrifying. I think woo is like in my like late 20s, early 30s, but includer has a purpose of bringing somebody into a circle for me. And so if I have a reason to reach out to that person and make a connection, and usually that drive is to make them feel like they're a part of something, then it's a lot easier for me than just walking up to somebody, let's say at a networking event, and just starting a random conversation about something. Feels very difficult to me. So that for me is probably the difference.
Yeah, and I love I'm hearing the motivation differences, and it's showing where those lines are, with the domains. The influencing in woo is really about influencing others, wanting to make that impression and, get them to do something or be part of something. Whereas your includer is really just about, bringing them into the fold, like hearing their voice or, making sure that they feel like they're actually included. So I love the difference in the two of those, but they could look very similar, I think.
Yeah. And it's interesting talking about the intention part, building off of what Shaina was saying. I was going back and looking at my notes from the woo episode, and one of the pieces that intrigued me about the woo segment that kind of builds into this is that they often, I think our guests at that time had sort of indicated that they like to make sure that people are connected to each other so that then they can kind of go off and accomplish something, and the person with woo can move on to the next set of connections.
Right.
Whereas this, from what we've already heard, is much more about kind of bringing people together,
Yeah.
not spoken wheel, but around the person that has included. Shaina
Yeah.
and Florence have already talked about that. Bring the table together, bring people in, having an expanding circle. Woo seems to have that sort of touch and go of let's make the connection, let's get them on the right track, and then let's kind of let them go again. They've done the winning, so now let's just move on to the next win. And so just an interesting difference, or again, that intentional, what's the intention behind each of the theme. So Florence, it looked like you were about to say something.
In our practice, professional practice, I mean, sometimes we talk about holding the space, but there's something with includer for me that comes out, I think, as creating a container for people to be together. Not so much that I would go from person to person, but having the container.
Oh, this is so foreign to me, Chad, but I love hearing it from the two of you. Like with all my heavy executing themes, if I'm bringing people in, it's because I need to get stuff done. And I love hearing this like no agenda. It's really just about the people, and what a loving, comfortable place for you two to, bring people in and have them be heard and feel like they're a part. So I'm loving this already. Now, knowing that we have great stuff, and I've already heard it a little bit out of both of you. It's ways that our talents do well for us, but other ways our talents can get in our way and maybe cause us to trip up a bit. So I want to talk about the positives and negatives of this, and we're going to start with the negatives and switch us over to the positives. But to start, in what ways, Shaina, do you feel like your includer might get in your way and maybe has caused some negative effects for you?
Yeah, well, this started showing up for me as I, went through the CliftonStrengths certification course, and they asked you to start thinking back to like when you were a kid, and how did these strengths, did you see these showing up for you at all? And I was like, oh gosh, yeah, this actually happened when I was 6, and I ran away from home, and I took my 3-year-old brother with me. But I also went next door and asked the neighbor girls if they wanted to run away too. And their parents assured me that they didn't. But anyways, so we went on our way, and I was like, gosh, I was including people at a young age and not for the right reasons, right?
Sure.
But I think that's kind of carried into adulthood. And it's one of the things that I have to manage with the includer, of not getting too many cooks in the kitchen, or not getting stuck in analysis paralysis, because I want to make 100% of the people happy, not just 80% of the people. And I want 100% of the people to have a say in what we're doing and how we move forward, not just 80% of the people. And so again, that can be that includer in raw form, is too many cooks in the kitchen, and you end up with complexity and stagnation and analysis paralysis. So that's how includer can show up in that raw form for me.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. And Florence, how about you?
Yeah, I piggyback on what Sheila said. For me, there's something about everybody to have said yes to something, whatever it may be. And so I may, an anecdote I tell sometimes is, I can wait for people to validate something, or go through review either a proposal or minutes from a meeting or whatever it may be, a document, and really wait patiently for everybody to come back. And so I've learned to not wait either. I mean, this will sound very simple, but for me it was something that I needed to learn, to set a deadline. I work with deadlines, okay, but set a deadline for others to say, okay, let's, within 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it may be, please come back, and then we'll move on. So that is the downside for me, is sometimes I create delays, or I will spend maybe too much time or of my energy. There's also another aspect of, what are the boundaries that I hold?
Yeah.
Where do I include? Where do I trust my own gut, or my own intuition, or my own mind to move forward? And then I don't know, I can mention also, I can tell myself stories easily if I'm not in the loop of something, that I'm being put aside, and so I may feel excluded easily. So again, this is something learning through strengths. I mean, and even
Sure.
auto-coaching myself, I've learned to step out of, but I can see this pattern in a past version of me.
Yeah.
Shaina, I see you nodding along too. Is that a hurtful place for you too when you're feeling left out?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened just this past weekend. My mom went somewhere with my aunt that we had talked about going all together before, and then they went and they were like, my mom sent me a text and she was like, "Oh, you should come with us next time." And I was like,
Aw.
"Hey, would have come, but you didn't invite me." So
Yeah.
yeah, it stings a bit when you're not included in something, whether you want to be a part of it or not. You just want to know that you're included.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's that like it's like ask me. I might not say yes, but still ask, right? Yeah.
Yes, those memes that float around out on social media of, me in my sweatpants and my cats on Friday night, like sitting on the couch watching TV. And it's like, yeah, I want you to ask me to go out, but I'm probably not going to do it because this is what I'm doing instead.
Right.
Oh my goodness. So
So,
I'll go. I'm sorry, Chad. Go ahead.
that's okay. I just want to build on something that Jan, I think you mentioned before, and it kind of ties in with this invitation sort of thread that we're pulling on.
Mm.
I think you've mentioned to me before that one of the other places that includer has sometimes caught you up is like when you facilitate, and you might have a room of 20 or 50 people, and good conversation gets going, that
Mm.
you have a tough time letting go. I think you and I related somewhat because my harmony wants to do the same thing of let's make sure everything's even, make sure that nobody's left out, nobody's everybody's been represented. You had mentioned that as something that you struggle with includer as well. Is that true? And can you, maybe I've said everything you meant to say, but is there something you'd add to that, or some
Yeah, I think
clarification you'd put?
Yeah, I think when I facilitate, I like to ask a lot of questions and generate a lot of discussion because I think participants learn from each other as well. And so when people want to participate and the discussion is flowing and people want to add their perspective, I have a hard time cutting that off. And, that as we talk about theme dynamics, command is really low as well. So but I think to Florence's point, sometimes my responsibility will kind of step in and be like, okay, we've got a time limit and we've got to meet this time limit. But it's really difficult to cut it off and say, okay, that's enough. We don't need to hear from anybody else. I obviously wouldn't say that, but that's what it feels like to me. And that's difficult.
Yeah, to cut someone off.
Yeah, when they want to participate, because obviously when you're facilitating, you want good engagement from people. And so when they're, into the content and they're wanting to contribute, it's hard to say like, nope, we got to move on,
Florence, you look like you're about to jump out of your seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gets me to change the agenda.
Oh.
I mean, that is the kind of, it brings on the plus side the flexibility in the moment. And I think I was reflecting maybe with one of you that my adaptability talent is extremely low, so it's not what drives me, but I will adapt and really flex and meet the people needs through includer, because if I sense that something is coming up and people are discussing something that's important for them, then my includer will say, okay, what do we need to address here, and make a choice.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you're like adapting to what they need
rather than
by including them. Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And the other thing on the plus side as well, because I mean we've got to talk about
we're gonna go
sides, don't we?
Absolutely. Let's.
In team coaching, in systemic coaching, we talk about the system, and so includer I think helps me, and I'm sure Shaina, same for you. Bring people in. So hear the odd voice or have the silent voice come in. So make sure that, in teams of 8, 10, we will indeed hear from everyone or notice everyone, even if they're not very talkative. Just pay attention.
Jen, what's striking me about what they're sharing here is, yes, we're talking a lot about coaching environments, but I'm thinking about some of the team leaders that we have wanted to reach with this and get them to engage with their teams. If you're a team leader and you've got this includer, think about your team meetings and whether you're including too many perspectives or waiting too long for input, or you're dragging somebody in the conversation that may not even want to contribute, just because you want to see and hear them be included. So I just want to make the quick translation that we're talking a lot about coaching because we're coaches and that's our environment. But as we think about translating this over into the workplace, team leaders or even team members that maybe have strong personalities or are trying to get good conversation going, boy, you got to. It's a tricky balance to strike because you want the input, but you also got to move on with the agenda. You don't want to keep people there for 4 hours to talk about 3 things. So just I wanted to make that translation apparent for those that are listening to this.
Yeah, it's great. Well, and so I want to keep us going on the positive side of this. And Florence, I love what you're sharing already. Is there a specific way that you feel like your includer has really made you shine in your role in your life? Like what do you feel like is the biggest positive to your includer talent?
Oh, I'm sure there are many positives, but one thing it helps is to build proximity, so closeness with people, whether clients, for instance, or people in organizations that I work with, create really that sense of belonging. I think, if I may say, I include myself in organizations quite easily, so I feel part of it, and I have to also pay attention to this. Also, I guess one of the things I do well is to build bridges across I'm the anti-silo, so that could also be about connectedness, but it's the includer. And I think where includer really helps me is I can connect the same way to a CEO or a manager or a clerk or a receptionist. For me, we are all human beings, and that serves me well, and I guess serves the clients well. On many accounts. I mean, sometimes, it's very lonely at the top, so it's good for those folks to feel just connected human to human. And same with other, they like for me to take into account what they're saying, what they're sharing, because it's also important, even if they are not the decision maker.
Flattens that hierarchy and makes everyone feel like they're important. Oh, I love that. Thank you. All right, Shaina, for you, where do you feel like your includer really shines and it is so apparent and so positive in your life?
Yeah, I will tell you another story, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
So I was interviewing people for my book. I interviewed about 100 people, leaders, employees, all different levels. And I was doing this one interview with a gentleman who was telling me the story. He says, Shaina, years and years ago, I was a new HR director at this healthcare organization and just kind of getting my feet under me in the first couple of weeks. We had a leadership meeting that was off campus. And after the meeting, a bunch of the leaders went to lunch and everybody got their lunch and they sat at this table and I didn't fit at the table. And mind you, this gentleman is like almost 7 feet tall. I mean, he's ginormous. I was like, did you just not physically fit, or there wasn't a seat for you, right? And he said, so I sat at this table off by myself, and this one leader noticed, and she got up and she came over to sit by me. And let me tell you, that was no easy feat because she had a broken foot. She had this big boot on. She had crutches. She had to schlep her lunch and her bag and everything over there. And he said, nothing she could have said to me in that moment would have communicated you matter more than her actions did. And, at this point, I'm like wiping tears from my eyes. I was like, David, you're making me cry in this interview. And he was like, Shaina, that was you. And I was like, I did that. Like, I remember having a broken foot, but I don't remember doing that. But to me, just receiving that feedback was something that, as I kind of talked through it with him, I said, that's just me. And I don't even notice I'm doing that. And I think that kind of helps outline the power of strengths, right? It's innate. It's just something that comes naturally to us. But receiving that feedback helped me really understand how me being me can make a difference to somebody. And he said to me, that's something I'll remember for the rest of my life. And that was probably 13 years ago that happened. And he's still retelling the story. And so that was really meaningful. And like I said, I think that's one of the ways that you can really make a difference with an includer, and sometimes not even know unless people share that with you, how you made them feel.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this. Like that goes back to the like no agenda, right? Like your agenda is really just about making sure people feel heard and like included and whatever. Whereas, like the other agendas, I'm thinking of my pile of purples over here.
Yeah.
Like my agendas would be like, okay, what can we get done with this guy?
Yeah.
So I just love the just closeness and wonderful. And that's a great story. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing.
Um, Tina, I would echo what Jen's saying in terms of the power of bringing people into the fold. I think both of you have sort of used that term in varying ways. Um, I am curious because I think this is something that you and I have talked about before about sort of the circle size. We're talking about bringing people in, and whether it's a dining table like Florence was talking about, or facilitation. And I'm just wondering, because I think you've talked a little bit about maybe the relator theme being high in your order, and I know you're a fellow learner like myself. I'm just wondering, like, is there sort of an ideal size? I've had the same conversation with people with empathy. Some people,
Mm.
you know, pick up on the emotional wavelength of people when they're better one-on-one, and then other people with empathy need the large room so that they can sort of feel the differences between people, or feel the combined emotional weight of the room.
Mhm.
I'm wondering if Includer has a similar uh, take. Is there an ideal size for you? Is there, you like including people more on sort of a one-on-one connection, or I've seen facilitators with 1,000 people in the room, and is that something that, like, Includer, hey, we've got 1,000 people all at the table? Talk to me about what the circle size is for you. And Florence, I'm first asking Shane because I know she and I have talked about this in terms of Learner and a couple others, but I'd also be interested in your take on this. So I'd like to start with Shayna and then maybe switch it over.
Yeah, and I think, Chad, it depends on what the situation is, right? So yeah, my
Okay.
relator, includer, I said this before, I think like includer stretches my circle wider. It brings people to my circle, and relator decides who can stay, right? Because
Okay.
some people that I try to include will opt out and be like, for me, whatever we're doing, right?
Okay.
And my relator's kind of okay with that. Like, I don't need a huge circle if we're thinking about like I've got 200 connections on Facebook versus 2,000, right? Or 500 connections on LinkedIn versus 5,000. And I just, for me personally, need that small group of really good friends that I feel close to. When we're thinking about work, again, the learner in me loves to learn, but it also loves to facilitate the process of learning for everybody else too.
Okay.
So the more the merrier. And I have a colleague right now who's always like, let's just love on everybody. I just want to love on everybody. Like, if they want to join our learning opportunity or our course or our session, but they don't quite fit the criteria, who cares? Let's just love on everybody, right? And he
Nice.
probably has some includer too as well.
Uh-huh.
But in my mind, yeah, you know what? You want to learn something? I want you to be included, right? Come on in. I don't care if you're not a leader, but you want to take this course on communication skills. Great. It's going to be good for you too. So I think when it comes to that, perhaps that learner includer, I don't know if there is an out of control or too big for that, right? Like, let's teach everybody, love on everybody. But when it comes to personal, I think I will invite anybody to my circle regardless. And I think Florence talked about this earlier. It's very non-discriminate, right? I don't care who you are, where you come from. I'm going to invite you to my circle. And if you want to stay, great. If my relator decides that I want you to stay, great. But you're going to get an invite for
Yeah.
sure.
Nice. Florence, I saw you nodding along, a big
Yeah,
smile on your face.
I
So I really want to.
so
What's your answer?
yeah, my relator is low, I mean 20 something. I was just thinking, I am indeed sometimes not very discriminate, and the invitation will be standing. So just to give a personal example, I maybe twice or three times a year organize some drinks and food for circle of friends or acquaintances, and I will create a WhatsApp group, and I'll put in all the names and people that I can think of in this moment. This could be up to 60, maybe even more, and then invite people to say what date suits them. And sometimes I actually do two events so that everybody can come in. So that's a really not very controlled way of inviting people. So that's one thing. Work-wise, I guess one of the sweet spots for me, it's clearly not 1,000 people, but the region of 20, 30, 40, 50, even 100 is good. And I'm happy to include whoever comes along, as Shaina said. I mean, definitely +1 to that. But also, even with a group of 100 or even more, pay attention, and this is not very conscious, to anyone who may be less participating, and just kind of bring them in one way or other in a very light way. So I kind of pace the room, and when we're doing debriefs, go with the mic wherever someone may be, I feel they may be wanting to speak, and if they're not, then I let go, and it's all very in a nice flow, no pun. So yeah.
That's fantastic. And I just appreciate that, because people that are still learning about this theme may appreciate, they may see themselves in sort of, I've heard sort of 3 core examples here. Shana, you talked about your relator, keeping things relatively small, and then learner, expand the room as much as you can, and 1,000 people is great. And then Florence, I think you've hit a nice, like, sort of sweet spot right in the middle, that is that non-discriminate but very welcoming host. So I appreciate the 2 of you highlighting 3 different ways this includer can show up and welcome people and bring people in. So thank you. I want to move us on to the next question, because actually the 2 of you have already started to touch on it a little bit. We know the themes don't operate in silos, and we've talked, these first 3 questions are really just to lay the groundwork and help us start to understand what this looks like on its own. As we think about how our themes interact with others, I'm wondering if either of you, and Florence, I'm going to come to you first with this question. Are there themes that you find yourself often pairing with your includer to kind of enhance its benefit, enhance its success, or enhance your own success? I'm just wondering if, as others that are listening to this are thinking about their own themes, they might be able to, connect with, oh, there's a pairing that I have too. Maybe I could lean into that a little bit. I'm just wondering what themes you go to.
Yeah, so I think the ideal partner to my includer, and they really work, even as I explained to you today, as you are asking questions, I'm thinking about this, I'm probably answering with my includer and also my connectedness. So includer is no judgment for anybody, welcome perspective, and connectedness knows no border. So together, like we are the world, which is true. The other one I can mention is my positivity. So not only I welcome other perspectives or other people, but I also see what's good about them or in them or in what they bring very easily. So there's also no effort. And I will, because it may seem that I have no structure, but I do. My arranger, it's just below what's on screen, will orchestrate. I mean, there is someone in the control room, of course. So arranger will orchestrate the involvement of everyone. So even when I design things or experiences, I'm thinking, okay, how do we make sure by design, not just by my talents, but by design, that everybody gets to chime in, gets to feel they're heard.
Nice. Wonderful examples. I really appreciate all 3 of those theme dynamics. It's great examples. They almost come from, I mean, a couple of them are also relationship building theme, but I love adding that arranger in terms of the executing side. So Shaina, what pairings do you often find yourself going to sort of amp up your includer, or really make it the best it can be?
I'm glad you said the best it could be, because I was like, I don't know that it needs to be ramped up anymore.
Okay.
I'm probably overusing it most of the time, right? So the strengths I might use to temper the relator.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
To keep it in check and to use it in that mature form, right, would be a responsibility. I think that really manages a lot of strengths for me from getting out of control. So we talked about getting too many cooks in the kitchen, analysis paralysis, but I'll leverage that responsibility of saying, okay, I have a deadline. So I think to Florence's point earlier, like, I will set a deadline, and if you respond to me by this time, I of course want your feedback, but if you don't, I'm moving on because I've got to meet a deadline, right? So I will put out the feelers to everybody who can contribute to this, who wants to contribute, but my responsibility will manage not letting that get out of control and putting things off too much. I also think learner too, when I bring people into my circle, whatever that is, if it's work or personal, really asks a lot of questions. Like it's probably a combination of learner relator of how can we connect on a deeper level and what can I learn about you to help us connect. And that way I know how to bring you into the fold down the road, right? If we're working on a project, or where do I think you can contribute, or where would you want to contribute to this? And when I work with a lot of leaders, one of the challenges that they often have is they make assumptions, right? Well, they won't want to help because of this, or they won't contribute because of that, or I don't want to call them because of, and I said, did any of this fact? Or have you asked them
Right.
this? Right. And they
Yeah.
don't often know. They're like, oh yeah, I am kind of making assumptions here. And I'm not including them because of the story that I'm telling myself. And so I think that's where I can kind of help myself and them with what can you learn that'll help you make a more informed decision about how to include your team in those things.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah. That's those are fantastic. Florence, just because I don't want to leave you out, I'm trying to have you my
Thank
own
you.
includer.
Appreciate
28,
it.
28. You know, building on Shayna's comment about sort of, your includer getting away from yourself, it's kind of running down a rabbit hole. Jen and I have talked about sometimes our responsibility or my learner will run, very far ahead, and get myself in trouble. Are there themes that you lean on to kind of manage or again, sort of bring that includer back to its sweet spot, its best contribution?
Yeah, so my savior, so to speak, can be activator, which, comes in to kind of, let me not save the day, but at least say, okay, now it's time to move on, or now it's time that I move on. So stop waiting for people if they're not ready. So it kind of gives rhythm, whereas includer could be kind of very, very slow sometimes. So activator balances it out.
Nice. Thank you very much for that. So for our listeners, we've heard now like 6 different themes
Mhm.
that you can pair with your includer to get the best out of it. So
It's a good partner. It's a good partner
yes,
theme.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a great partner
absolutely.
theme.
It's a
And
very
I'm not,
open theme. I mean, and from the, Kurt Liesveld, Gallup said something in one of his podcasts, which I thought was very enlightening for me. It was about closed and open themes, and includer definitely is
mhm.
wide open. So you need something to kind of sometimes just bring, movement or close or energy forward.
Yeah, awesome. Well, speaking of the partner themes, so I think it's really interesting, Florence. We've had this conversation about others that you've worked with and that you don't see includer very often.
No.
So share with me a little bit about what that means for you being an includer and then having all these people around you without.
Yeah, so I never mind that people don't have it, but I have noticed because you asked me that in fact I don't. I mean, it's very seldom that I've worked with people with includer, and certainly I've not worked in a certain duration of time with anyone with includer at all. Um, the meaning I make of it is that, well, we find each other because we're complementary, and I do bring
Yeah.
this including stretch the circle, no hierarchy or flat, as you were saying, vibe to whoever I'm working with. I will ask, like Shaina said, okay, let's ask your team or let's ask the people. And this is not an automatic thought of most people,
Right.
but I do that. Yeah.
And that was one of the things I thought was just really amazing. Like knowing I've worked with a few people who have includer, and that's what I see in them is it's always about, well, who else can we include? It doesn't even matter if they need to be there. Mine's all very like specific, like we're doing this and we need these specific people because they're the ones who can do the work. And my includer buddy is like, well, we have to bring all of these people. And I'm like, why? And now I'm seeing, listening to the two of you, I'm feeling her with me, like as she's bringing everyone in and wants everyone to be involved because everyone has a place, it's just in her that way.
Yeah.
So hearing these compliments of how, you know, having someone with Includer on your team and being with you, like, can help you make sure all the voices are heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, what you're saying, Jennifer, makes me think that Includer, I probably use it even without being aware of it in change projects. How do we get everyone to onboard the change and keep moving along as whatever is happening?
Oh,
So it's a good change management, you know, like community building, bring people along.
Sure.
Shaina, you've been nodding and
yeah.
smiling along. I was just gonna say, and I get my learner's like, she has an idea brewing, and I just want to open the door for whatever you're like thinking in terms of the relation. You know what Jen's original question was and Florence's answer, which I thought was wonderful. But I can tell you have something to contribute here, and I don't want to leave it out.
Well, super relatable, right? I mean, so I was just co-facilitating a strategic planning workshop 2 or 3 weeks ago with one of my colleagues, and these managers that were in there had to create a strategic plan for their area, and every single one of them got really caught on the pushback from their team and how to manage the pushback and the resistance and change. And my question for every single one of them, because they all had this plan that they were driving forward with, and I said to each and every one of them, how did you get feedback from your team? What feedback did you get from your team on this plan? What input did they have into the solution? And you kind of get these blank stares. And so I think for me, being able to leverage that where it might not be top of mind for somebody, I think, Jen, to your point, where you say, I'm going to involve these people because I know this is what they contribute. In my mind, I'm going, but this process touches this person and this person and this person, and it could be peripherally, but it impacts them, and impact is a big thing, right? And then I was also thinking while you all were talking, you know, the number one reason people leave a company right now is because they don't feel seen, valued, or heard.
Yep.
And so, I'll work with so many leaders who say, well, gosh, I tell them thank you every day. Like, that's great that you're giving them some gratitude. Gratitude is nice, but it's not feedback. Like, you're not giving them feedback specifically on this podcast, their strengths, right? What are they doing well? You're not telling them, hey, you know what, you coming to sit by me at lunch the other week was really meaningful and it made me feel good, right? And so that's what makes people feel seen, valued, and heard is that specificity. And so leveraging that includer talent can maybe help people pick up on where they might be missing or where maybe they might have that blind spot in terms of bringing people into the fold.
Yeah.
I want to build on.
I so love that I'm sorry, but I so love that you said that, like, understanding that the decisions that we're making are touching everyone. And so while yes, there may be key people who need to be part of the like rollout or how this is going to happen, but getting that feedback is so important because it's going to affect everyone. Yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you, when I was interviewing people for my book, I kept this spreadsheet and I kind of categorized everything. And I asked people, what's the one piece of advice you would give to your executive team if you were going to give them a piece of advice, right? And I kid you not, probably 80% of the responses were, get out onto the floor and understand what's happening, because you're making decisions that don't reflect reality of the work that's happening. And I think that just goes to show there's a disconnect there. And there might need to be more people included in the decisions that you're making.
Yeah.
I'm not saying include everybody, but there might be some opportunity for inclusiveness there in decision making and strategy and what's really the reality of the workplace.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, because that actually further enhances what I was going to say before Jen shared her beautiful thought. I don't know about the rest of you, but I know that for me, I've actually run into very few that have included. I've had a bunch that have been in workshops, so I haven't worked with them in depth. But even just with that, I have probably less than 50 out of the 400 or so people I've engaged in various levels of coaching. This is a relatively rare. I don't know what the official Gallup stats are, so I don't want to go that far and say that I have the exact.
I feel like Florence
rundown.
with her high input might know.
I do.
Maybe not.
Like,
well, let me just finish my thought, and then I'll get to the stat, because my analytical does want to know. But I think my point here is that if you are a team leader or somebody that is in charge of other people, which generally makes you a team leader, this is a talent that really you have the opportunity to kind of differentiate yourself from a lot of other leaders out there, other organizations, because if you put some, you know, even put just a little bit of effort into it, to your point about being, not seen, heard, or valued, wow, what a theme to lean into to keep great people on your team, make sure that things stay running the way they should, get out on the floor, get out into offices where you should be talking to people. So just I mentioned that as if there's a team
Yeah.
leader listening to this, you've got a real bright spot here, especially in the current work environment.
And if you
And
don't
work
have
culture.
includer, find your partner who does.
Yeah.
Right.
That can
Yes.
help, right?
I was not trying to leave out all the other team leaders. I was just trying to emphasize that this is a really sort of unique, special, and somewhat rare. Florence is going to clue me in on exactly where this
Angle.
sits.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be the weak signal and the engagement talent, I think, very much. Not the only talent that can do that, but certainly one.
Yeah.
And so I checked with the latest stats that were available from Gallup, it's in the 20s. So
Wow.
I thought it was way more frequent. We all believe the world is like us. So I
Yeah,
thought it would be
right.
much higher. But in fact, it's 20, I think 21 or 22, something like that. So
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
last third.
So yeah, bottom end
Yeah.
there. Wow.
I think similar to Chad, as I was preparing for this, I was looking at all of my clients and like all of the strengths, and I was like, I haven't really coached anybody that has high includer. So,
Yeah.
I
But
haven't
man,
seen it show up for them either as a strength or as a blind spot.
but even when you do, it's so very apparent. And that was one of the things that I think I loved about looking back at the people that I've coached and have been close with who have includer high. And there aren't very many, like you said, there aren't very many, but in every interaction with them, you can see it, feel it, they have included everyone. So it's just what a wonderful relationship building theme this is. Yeah.
So I'm going to build on our positive, including energy here, and ask for those that are first learning about this theme. Sometimes it's helpful to have sort of an image or a reference point. I'm wondering if, given that we've coached people, even if it's just a few, with this theme, are there images or maybe cultural references or a song or something that people could kind of keep in their brain as they think about either starting to relate to their own includer theme, or start to keep it in mind if they have maybe a colleague or a team member that has this includer theme? I wonder if there are certain images. Florence, I'd like to start with you, and Shaina, if you have something to contribute, obviously I want to include you in the conversation. Florence, you want to
So
start us
thanks
off?
for the question. My ideation got started on this one. So what came up for me almost immediately was this song from Band Aid, "Feed the World," I think the name was, with Michael Jackson and Quincy Jones and all the other singers. And I guess if I post-rationalize it, so to speak, on many accounts, because of the title, it's, including everybody and thinking about everybody eating, but also the fact that they brought so many different singers, different voices, high, lows, men, women, big, tall, black, white, Spanish, etc. So that would be the song for me of includer.
Nice.
And about making the world a better place also. And then the image could be, I'm less sure about this one, but it could be, for me personally, a kaleidoscope, where you get all the facets that create a beautiful image, but they're all same and different. And I guess to me, includers means that we are all human beings. So we are the same. And yet we are different. So something like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I've got nothing. I'm not a visual person. And I love Florence. As soon as Florence said like that song, I was like, yes. And I was thinking about all of the other songs that I think, didn't Lionel Richie do a song with everybody, like all these famous artists that he pulled together?
Is it the We Are the World?
We Are the World, was
that
that? Yeah. And they just did like a Netflix documentary on it or something that I haven't watched yet. But as soon as she said that, I was like, oh yeah, there's several artists that have done songs like that, but it's the perfect representation. And so I couldn't come up with anything else. So I was like, that's it. That's the image that stuck in my mind.
And as soon as she said Michael Jackson, I was thinking of is it Black or White?
Yeah,
like,
Black
if you're
or
thinking
White.
about my baby, it doesn't matter if you're black or white. Yeah. So I'm instantly going into all of these songs.
With Paul McCartney. That one too.
Right.
That would be a good one too. It's a less big one, but
I feel like we need to create an includer playlist now.
We probably do.
We've got enough to create a playlist that will like fire up your includer strength.
We absolutely do. Oh, I love that. Well, so
Jen,
10
did you?
for me.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
and I'm going to take a book from your play, or a page from your playbook of the team, because I'm thinking like a team huddle, you know, like whether that's like at the beginning of the game, you know, everybody hands in like 1, 2, 3, go, whoever, you know, like the bringing everyone together, making sure everyone's on the same page. We're like excited, we're, you know, connected to one another. We all have our parts to play, regardless of if we're warming the bench or we're bringing the water bottles. You know, we're all part of what's going on, and I'm not a sports person, so that's my closest I could get to it.
No, I came prepared with that image in case you didn't, because I had a suspicion you might, given that you know me. But yeah, in youth sports we do that all the time. Everybody hands in. So I would second that image. The other one I'm going to throw out there, and it actually builds off of something, Florence, you've already mentioned about sort of the table, and I think about. I have a fairly large extended family, so the Thanksgiving table, and you know, whether it's you're just inviting a very large extended family, but also I know a lot of people, especially in my local area, where they'll open their tables up to others, you know, strangers or people from the neighborhood, and just be able to, you know, express gratitude, but include everybody at the table and try and make the table as long as possible, so that everybody is sitting at the same place. So I would just throw that image out there for people to think about.
I'm guilty.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. I was thinking that. I'm like, we could see Shaina's and Florence's tables at any occasion, and I'm sure there's always extra seats added.
Yeah. And we talked about, like, you know, does your includer get offended if people say no?
Yeah.
It really doesn't, right? I'm going to invite you and you feel free to say no. I don't care, but I want you to know you're invited, right? So I will invite people that I know they have somewhere to go on Thanksgiving. Just invite them because it's just
in case they don't.
Seen, valued, and heard, right? Seen, valued, and heard.
Yeah. I'm going to ask anyways. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Nice. All right, so I want to, as we get to the end of our show, I want to ask one last question, and this one is specifically where, you know, like being more in this like work environment, because of what we're putting out, we're trying to help others be best at work with others. So as we think about how other people might best interact with those who have includer, what advice would you give to a team leader or peer? And Florence, I'm going to start with you, to help that person who has includer bring their best contribution to the team. What advice would you give to them?
I would say don't hesitate, or actually make a commitment to hand over anything that has to do with onboarding, welcoming, starting meetings, even creating a container for a seminar or retreat or all hands or whatever. I mean, includers, I think, will shine there, and let them know that you appreciate that also. Because it can be, I sense, a talent that goes unnoticed somehow, because it's open, it doesn't mind if it doesn't have feedback sometimes, so show it. And also task them with things that might have to do with, you know, bottom up or top bottom, or cross-functional, I think that's what you say, cross-functional projects. That I think includers would shine there. And of course, invite them to discussions, and maybe make it clear in your invitation you're invited if you feel that would make sense. So this way you don't do, you know, over include.
Great. Oh, those are great pieces of advice. Thank you. Shaina, how about for you?
I'm so glad that Florence brought up onboarding, because as she said that, it dawned on me that in 3 of my previous roles, I've been responsible for onboarding, and I've loved it. And I don't think I ever connected that. I always just assumed it was because the people that were onboarding were excited about their new job, right? They're in a good mood and they're happy to be there. And so I'm happy to be there with you. But now I'm connecting that to my includer of, hey, I'm including you in this organization and you're happy to be here. Like, that's a double bonus. So I'm pretty glad you said that, Florence, because that just connected the dots for me.
Welcome.
So yes, put them in charge of onboarding. I would also say include them in things, right? So try and I guess this is the opposite of try not to step on their strength or offend them in some way by, um, you know, it's hard for me when I'm given a project and I don't have any of the background information. And perhaps that's part of being included in the initial conversations around
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing? Why are we doing? How are we doing? So include them in the information gathering process so that they feel like they're part of the process as well. I think that's another good way to get the best out of an includer. And then to ask them too, if there's other things that you're doing, hey, who else should be involved in this? Who else do we need to think about? And let them help kind of generate some ideas there as well.
That's great. Great advice.
Yeah, definitely.
Love that.
Yeah, it's yeah, I love the thread through both of those responses, sort of also giving them sort of the autonomy to inspire others. It kind of comes back to that onboarding piece of the double bonus. You're allowing them to
Right.
use their talents, but also to those talents are then going to inspire the recipient to be that much more excited about whether it's coming into the organization or coming onto a project. So
Yeah.
I love what you just shared there. Um, as Jen mentioned, we are getting close to the end of this wonderful conversation, and
Great.
I and my learner probably don't want this to end, but I know that our listeners and you probably have other things to go into. So I'd like to just ask one last question, and that's really to help us sort of wrap this up. As we think about everything we've talked about today, and maybe there's been an idea that's been percolating in the back of your head, I'm wondering if you might give our Jen and I and our listeners maybe one of three key takeaways about this includer theme that you would really kind of like to hammer home at the very end here, so that people really, can really take some maybe action steps or some real concrete thoughts about this theme as they leave this podcast. Shane, I'd like to come to you first, and then Florence, I'd love to hear your key takeaways as well.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. It's just trying to make them come out where they make sense, right?
Bullet point them for us.
I know. And from what perspective am I speaking here? So I think
Yeah.
if I'm talking to a leader, it's number one is get to know your team, right? Know their strengths. It's so important in terms of engagement, but it's also how you give them feedback, right? It gives you a better understanding of where their blind spots are. And so this could be any strength, not just includer, but help them understand when they're getting too many cooks in the kitchen, or they're where it feels like they're dragging their feet. They're not actually, they're just trying to get as much input as possible, right? To understand how to maneuver around some of those blind spots, but then also give them feedback that's really meaningful, and how that includer is making a difference with you, with your team, with the organization. Give them an opportunity to leverage it. And I think that was it. That was all I came up with. I feel like
Very good.
we covered so
That's great.
much.
No, this has been a packed
It's
episode
really
to
good.
try and come up with just three. You did a wonderful job. Florence, what would be your 1 to 3 takeaways for our audience?
So as an includer, I'll take that perspective. I really +1 to what you said, Shaina. Totally. I couldn't say better. But for me, one takeaway is I'm suddenly realizing this theme is not that frequent. And actually, so it's an invitation to own your difference if you have includer or other themes, because it's a soft theme. I don't think it's either pushy or it doesn't take that much room. In fact, creates space but doesn't take a lot of room. And so being able to own this, I guess, to value your difference. And then the other thing I would share now, having listened to what was discussed today, is actually for me, my commitment would be I will share with the people I work with that I enjoy being in the loop, that it's not about me wanting to control or get mixed up in everything, but it's just that it makes me, let's say, more comfortable and maybe more intelligent too if I'm kept in the loop. So yeah, this would be my modus operandi that I can share, I think maybe a little loudly, because I know it, but they may not.
Yeah. Oh, so great.
Thank you so much
both
for this. Yeah.
so much
This is really
for
fun.
this episode. Like, this has been wonderful, and what a great way for us to end the full 34 with such an inclusive theme, knowing that now we've had everyone part of this, and really understanding how this includer works to bring everyone into the fold. We've so appreciated you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will second Jen's thanks. As we alluded to at the beginning, or actually called out, this does not sit super high for me. So hearing it, demonstrated through your words and a lot of the actions and stories you've shared, it has just been a real treat. And it, I hope, provides a lot of insight to those that listen to this, especially team leaders that are trying to engage with those that have this as a relatively rare theme. So with that, I would just like to, take a second for our listeners. If you really like this episode, which we hope you have, we really encourage you to leave us a review. Include your comments. I'm going to lean into the theme a little bit here. Include your comments, whether you engage with us on Acast, YouTube, or right on LinkedIn. Join the conversation, and tell us how your includer maybe has shown up for you. So yeah, just if you want more episodes like this, keep hitting the subscribe button and all the other ways you get notified, because we want to make sure this material gets to you.
Absolutely. And if you want to get in touch with any of us, including our guests, you can find all of our contact information in the show notes.
And so finally, I will just say until next time, because Jen and I are coming back with a season 2. Until next time, I'm Chad Ahern of Talent Teams Consulting. And I'm going to encourage you to keep playing to your strengths.
And I'm Jen Werner of Jen Werner Coaching, encouraging you to be uniquely you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode.